The alien officer was watching him long before his name was called. Ethan Cole stepped off the transport shuttle onto the wide landing platform of Illyrian Prime.
Test.
The station was alive with movement, a swirl of lights and shadows cast by ships docking and departing, their hulls reflecting the colors of distant stars. Aliens of all shapes, sizes, and colors walked across the platform, some with wings, others with extra limbs, and a few with skin that shimmered like liquid metal. Ethan felt a flicker of nervous excitement, but he kept his steps steady, his hands lightly brushing against the straps of his backpack. The air was filled with the hum of engines, the distant clang of machinery, and the chatter of languages Ethan could not understand. Signs in multiple alphabets flashed on walls and kiosks, offering directions, advertisements, and warnings. He paused briefly, letting his eyes adjust to the motion around him. Even in the chaos, he noticed patterns, the way aliens walked, the way ships docked, how the station guards moved. Patterns meant predictability, and predictability meant safety, or at least preparation. Unseen by Ethan, a pair of eyes tracked his movement. Talira, an alien officer with crystalline skin that reflected the ambient lights, leaned slightly forward from her observation post. She had been watching humans for years, studying them as they traveled the galaxy, and she had learned to pick out the rare ones who were more than they appeared. This human, Ethan, was not like the rest. She had observed his shuttles landing from afar, noted how he interacted politely with other passengers, how he avoided stepping on small children of various species, and even how he seemed to take in his surroundings with curiosity rather than fear. Talira tilted her head slightly. Humans were unpredictable. Many acted recklessly or overconfidently, rushing into danger without thought. But Ethan moved carefully. He scanned the station, calculated his path, and observed others' movements. These were qualities she respected, qualities that suggested intelligence, patience, and perhaps a hint of something deeper, something the galaxy needed more of. Ethan moved toward the central corridor, following the signs that indicated the council's headquarters. He passed small market stalls where alien vendors sold everything from glowing fruits to devices that emitted soft musical tones. Curious, he stopped at a stall to observe a vendor demonstrating a gadget that projected holographic maps. He nodded politely when the vendor offered a smile, then moved on without touching anything. This small display of respect for boundaries caught Talira's attention. Many humans might have immediately grabbed or demanded a demonstration, but not him. As he continued, he noticed a young alien child struggling to reach a floating vending panel. Without thinking too much about it, Ethan knelt and helped the child press the correct sequence. The child's eyes brightened, and it whispered a word of thanks that Ethan didn't understand but smiled at anyway. Talira made a small note: empathy, another rare trait. Observation, patience, empathy, these qualities made him stand out. She wondered what he might achieve if given the chance to operate in larger arenas, where stakes were higher than a busy station corridor. Ethan entered a transport hub that connected the station's various sectors. Moving walkways carried travelers quickly, while others navigated freely on foot. The lighting here was brighter, the ceiling taller, and the sound a mixture of mechanical whirs and alien voices blending into a chaotic symphony. He could feel the subtle vibrations through the floor, each movement of the walkways and vehicles sending tiny pulses beneath his boots. Most humans might ignore such details, but Ethan noted them, filing the information away as if it might matter later. Talira's observation system highlighted this behavior. Curiosity combined with awareness, useful, adaptable, a potential asset. Ethan paused near an information kiosk. The holographic interface projected a three-dimensional map of the station, showing the quickest route to the council's chambers. He studied it for a few moments, then adjusted his course, walking confidently in the direction indicated. A group of alien merchants crossed his path, arguing in a language he did not understand, but Ethan's calm demeanor helped him navigate without collision. Even minor social nuances mattered, and he seemed to notice them instinctively. Talira's sensors noted something else, a subtle energy in the human's body, a kind of calm determination that resonated with her own discipline. She had learned to sense these qualities in those she watched. Some beings carried fear like a shield, some carried arrogance like armor, but Ethan carried neither. He moved with focus and purpose, neither dominating nor retreating. This balance was rare, and she felt a growing respect for him even before their first direct encounter. Ethan reached a wide atrium filled with benches, floating information panels, and small cafes. He paused, unsure which elevator or pathway to take next. Observing the movement patterns of others, he identified a less crowded lift that would take him directly to the upper floors. As he moved, he noticed a group of aliens struggling to communicate with an automated service kiosk. Ethan approached and offered a few words in basic galactic common, and then used hand gestures to help them complete the transaction. They nodded, some offering a small gesture of gratitude. Small actions, but actions that built trust. Talira's attention sharpened. This human was quietly solving problems wherever he went, without seeking recognition or reward. He finally arrived at the entrance to the council's headquarters. The doors were massive, shimmering with an energy field that responded to authorized identifiers. Ethan paused, taking a deep breath. The weight of his task pressed upon him. He carried sensitive research data, crucial for upcoming interstellar scientific negotiations. Any mistake could jeopardize the mission, but he didn't let worry show. Instead, he adjusted his bag, checked his identification chip, and stepped forward with confidence. The doors parted with a soft hum, revealing the interior of the council chambers. The space was unlike anything Ethan had imagined. The floor was composed of panels that glowed softly, lighting up with each step. Platforms floated in the air, some moving gently, some stationary, and holographic displays projected reports, news, and announcements in multiple languages. Representatives from various planets were present, engaged in discussion, negotiation, or quiet observation. Ethan's presence went almost unnoticed at first, a single human amid countless aliens, yet Talira's eyes remained fixed on him. As he moved forward, he noticed small details. The way a delegation from the Valeran system interacted, how some species maintained strict silence while others conversed rapidly, the subtle codes and gestures that suggested hierarchy and priority. Ethan absorbed everything, noting not just what was happening but why it happened, what the potential consequences could be. He didn't just see the council. He saw the patterns of interaction, the energy of decisions, and the potential for both conflict and cooperation. Talira watched silently from a balcony above. She had been assigned to observe new arrivals, to see how candidates and visitors interacted with the council and each other. Most humans failed quickly, either overwhelmed by the complexity or frustrated by the slow pace of alien bureaucracy. Ethan, however, moved calmly and carefully, his mind active but unhurried. Every gesture, every decision, every response revealed more than skill. It revealed character. She noted it all, storing it for later analysis, already anticipating that this human might be more influential than most of his species ever had been. Ethan reached a small seating area near the council entrance, where others were waiting to be called for interviews or assessments. He took a seat, opened his bag, and quietly reviewed the documents he carried, cross-referencing data and making mental notes about potential questions or interactions. Around him, aliens conversed, some laughing, some arguing, some silently meditating. Ethan remained focused yet approachable, a balance that drew occasional glances from other species. They sensed his quiet confidence, even if they didn't understand why it existed. Hours passed. The waiting room grew busier, and Ethan noticed more subtle patterns. How some delegates avoided eye contact, how others tried to assert authority through posture or gesture, and how mistakes were corrected quietly without overt confrontation. He continued to observe, learning, adapting, and preparing. Talira, still watching, recognized the growing awareness in him. Observation alone did not make a strong candidate. The ability to act appropriately under pressure and to maintain integrity and empathy did. Ethan displayed all of these traits without conscious effort, a natural blend of awareness, patience, and respect. Finally, a council aide approached, scanning the waiting area before focusing on Ethan. "Ethan Cole," the aide asked in clear galactic common. Ethan nodded and followed. As he walked toward the interview chambers, he sensed, without knowing why, that someone had been watching him, someone important, someone whose judgment mattered. Talira descended slightly from her observation point, blending into the crowd but keeping him in sight. The human was unaware of her presence, yet she knew the impact his actions, both large and small, would have on what was about to unfold. The chamber doors opened, revealing a space of light and energy that seemed to respond to presence and intention. Ethan entered cautiously but confidently, aware that his every action was observed and recorded. He did not feel fear, only curiosity and readiness. He would face tests, challenges, and scrutiny, but he was prepared to meet them with patience, intelligence, and empathy. Talira, watching silently from her vantage point, allowed a small smile to form. The human had potential. He was exactly the kind of being she had hoped to find, someone who could navigate complexity, inspire cooperation, and perhaps change how humans were perceived across the galaxy. For now, he was just a candidate, another visitor to the council. But Talira knew better. The alien officer had been watching him long before his name was called, noting every gesture, every choice, every thought revealed in action. By the time he would realize it, Ethan's path would be shaped not by the galaxy's prejudices, but by his own qualities, and by the quiet recognition of an alien who had seen his true potential from the very beginning. Ethan followed the council aide through long, curved corridors. That seemed to shift subtly with each step. The walls glimmered with embedded lights that adjusted automatically to his presence, giving the impression that the station itself was alive. The floors hummed softly beneath his boots, transmitting faint vibrations that told him the structure was vast and complex, far beyond anything he had ever experienced. The corridors opened into a large waiting area, where delegates from countless worlds exchanged notes, murmured quietly, or observed the holographic reports that floated above each platform. Ethan remained calm, walking steadily and taking careful notice of everything. He observed the behavior of those around him. Some delegates fidgeted nervously, others projected confidence through posture and voice, and a few seemed entirely absorbed in their own thoughts, oblivious to the flow of the room. Ethan's eyes swept across the area, noting patterns, noticing how individuals reacted to changes in environment and social cues. He was quiet, yet fully aware, like a mind at work, constantly processing the details around him. Talira had followed his progress from above, blending into a cluster of observers so that he could not detect her. She appreciated his careful observation and the subtle respect he showed to every being he passed. Unlike most humans, who either ignored or attempted to dominate alien systems through force or loudness, Ethan moved with patience and intelligence. Each choice he made reflected not just caution but understanding and empathy, qualities that were rare even among experienced diplomats. Finally, the aide stopped before a set of massive, transparent doors. "Please wait here," the aide said. Ethan nodded and stepped into a small foyer, where the walls displayed shifting data about the council's activities, recent interstellar developments, and social projects. The information was dense and complex, yet Ethan skimmed through it efficiently, noting details relevant to his task. He saw reports of resource-sharing initiatives between planets, updates on medical research, and a few mentions of interstellar conflicts resolved peacefully. He paused, absorbing the significance of these reports and how they might influence his upcoming interactions. Talira watched him note each piece of information, the subtle flickers of his expression revealing understanding, curiosity, and judgment. She had observed many humans fail to grasp complex contexts quickly. Ethan, however, understood more than just facts. He grasped relationships, implications, and subtleties that often went unnoticed. This ability to synthesize information into practical insight made him unusual, a potential agent for bridging worlds that often struggled to understand each other. After several minutes, the doors opened with a soft hum, revealing a large chamber where members of the council awaited. Platforms hovered above a reflective surface, each occupied by delegates of various species. Some had multiple arms, others had bioluminescent skin, and a few had shapes that shifted slightly as if adjusting to their environment. Despite their differences, all carried an air of authority, and Ethan could feel the weight of their combined attention as he entered. He was guided to a central platform, slightly raised, where he could face the council without feeling exposed. A holographic display projected his credentials and the purpose of his visit, emphasizing the critical research data he carried. As he stood there, he noticed reactions from different delegates: curiosity, skepticism, mild surprise, and a few whispers exchanged between individuals. He did not let these reactions unsettle him. Instead, he focused on observing, understanding, and preparing for the questions ahead. Talira adjusted her position to get a clearer view. She had been instructed to observe new arrivals and evaluate their capabilities, but she found herself increasingly interested in Ethan's behavior. Most candidates either showed arrogance, fear, or impatience. Ethan displayed none of these. He remained composed, attentive, and engaged, demonstrating qualities that would allow him to succeed not through dominance or charm, but through genuine understanding and practical wisdom. The first council member addressed him. Their voice resonated in the chamber, formal and precise. "Ethan Cole of Earth, you are here to present critical research data to the Galactic Science Council. Before that, we must understand your approach, your reasoning, and your ability to interact under complex circumstances." "Are you prepared?" Ethan nodded. "Yes," he said simply, his voice steady. He had prepared for scrutiny, for complex questioning, and even for unexpected challenges. He had not anticipated any physical threat, but he had trained himself to remain calm, observant, and flexible in unfamiliar situations. His preparation, though internal and quiet, gave him confidence. The council then initiated a series of simulations, designed to assess more than knowledge. The chamber shifted subtly, projecting scenarios that mimicked real-world crises, systems failures, communication breakdowns, and urgent problem-solving situations. Delegates observed the participants as they navigated these scenarios. Most candidates acted impulsively, relying on instinct or force, often ignoring the needs of others or failing to consider long-term consequences. Ethan approached the first simulation carefully. The projection depicted a transportation hub in chaos, with stranded travelers and malfunctioning energy systems. He did not panic or rush. Instead, he assessed the situation, noting patterns in movement, energy distribution, and communication signals. He approached stranded travelers calmly, directing them to safe zones, then moved to stabilize critical systems using the tools provided. He coordinated efforts efficiently, helping others rather than attempting to dominate or control the situation. Talira's attention sharpened. Humans often failed in such situations, either panicking or taking reckless shortcuts. Ethan's calm, methodical approach, combined with his consideration for the welfare of others, made him exceptional. She watched as he adapted to new variables, corrected mistakes, and maintained focus despite distractions. He did not seek recognition, yet his actions naturally inspired confidence and cooperation among the others in the simulation. The next scenario was more complex, a diplomatic challenge requiring negotiation between two alien species whose customs and languages were completely different. Ethan observed the differences carefully, noting each species, nonverbal cues and subtle gestures. He spoke slowly, clearly, and respectfully, allowing each party to express themselves fully. When misunderstandings arose, he clarified gently and suggested compromises that satisfied both sides. Again, Talira noted his performance. Leadership did not require force. It required understanding, patience, and the ability to think beyond oneself. Ethan demonstrated all of these traits naturally. By the end of the simulation, even some skeptical delegates expressed quiet approval. The human had not only navigated the challenges successfully, but had done so in a way that upheld dignity, fostered cooperation, and minimized conflict, a rare achievement in interstellar affairs. After the simulations, the Council allowed a brief pause for reflection and discussion. Candidates were encouraged to analyze their performance and consider how they might improve. Ethan took notes quietly, reflecting on each scenario and noting subtle points he could address if similar situations arose in real life. He did not boast or complain. He simply prepared, demonstrating a disciplined and mature approach. Talira leaned back slightly, her thoughts turning toward strategy. She had been watching humans for decades, many of whom had failed to grasp the nuance of alien systems or the subtle requirements of interstellar cooperation. Ethan, however, had instinctively demonstrated qualities that could influence entire systems, not through force, but through wisdom, empathy, and observation. She knew that his success here could have far-reaching consequences, potentially redefining how humans were perceived across multiple sectors. As the session resumed, the Council introduced a final challenge, a scenario that combined elements of strategy, problem-solving, and ethical decision-making. Participants were required to prioritize objectives, manage resources, and negotiate solutions while keeping multiple stakeholders satisfied. Ethan approached the scenario calmly, identifying key objectives, evaluating risks, and considering long-term outcomes. He communicated clearly with all involved parties, balancing efficiency with fairness, and demonstrating both intelligence and compassion. By the end of the session, the council members exchanged glances, some nodding subtly, others scribbling notes. Ethan stood quietly, aware that his actions had been observed in detail, but not knowing how they would be interpreted. He felt a sense of accomplishment, not for personal recognition, but for having approached the challenges thoughtfully and effectively. Talira finally stepped forward, formally introducing herself. "Council members," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I have observed this candidate for some time, not only today but in his approach to travel, interaction, and preparation prior to arrival. I believe he demonstrates qualities that are rare and valuable: patience, empathy, insight, and adaptability. I recommend his consideration not only for his immediate task, but for potential roles that require trust, judgment, and understanding." The chamber murmured with interest. Delegates who had doubted the human paused, reconsidering their assumptions. Humans were often underestimated, seen as impulsive or short-sighted. Ethan's performance, combined with Talira's assessment, challenged that stereotype. The council had before it a candidate who had not only demonstrated competence, but had done so in a way that inspired confidence and trust across multiple species. Ethan listened quietly, his mind absorbing the praise and observations, but he remained grounded. Recognition was secondary. understanding was primary. He had learned much from observing others, from noticing patterns, and from applying logic and empathy simultaneously. He realized that success in the galaxy depended not only on knowledge or skill, but on character, the choices one made under pressure, the respect one showed for others, and the ability to navigate complexity with patience and insight. Talira returned to her observation post, satisfied that her assessment had made an impact. She knew that Ethan's journey was just beginning, and that challenges would increase in scale and consequence. Yet, she had no doubt in his abilities. She had watched him long before his name was called, and she recognized potential that others would overlook until it was too late to influence. As Ethan exited the chamber, he felt a subtle shift in the energy of the room. Delegates and observers who had initially been indifferent now regarded him with quiet curiosity and respect. He did not seek it, but it came naturally, a reflection of his calm, insightful approach and the character he had consistently demonstrated. Outside the chamber, the station continued its busy rhythm, a swirl of ships, aliens, and technology. Ethan paused briefly, taking in the movement, the sounds, and the energy around him. He knew that his mission was far from over. There would be more tests, more challenges, and more opportunities to prove not only his ability, but the value of his humanity in a galaxy that often judged too quickly and understood too little. Talira, observing from her vantage point, allowed herself a small, approving smile. The human had navigated the first stages with quiet intelligence, empathy, and adaptability. He had not yet realized the extent of her observation, but she would continue to watch, to guide subtly, and to ensure that his potential was recognized. The galaxy was vast, filled with beings who valued power and influence, yet here was a human who relied on patience, understanding, and integrity, a combination that could shape the future in ways few expected. Ethan walked toward the next area of the station, unaware of the full scope of observation and expectation surrounding him. Yet each step, each careful decision, and each act of empathy brought him closer to demonstrating not only competence, but the remarkable potential of humanity in a galaxy that had yet to appreciate it fully. And Talira knew, long before he did, that the human she had been watching would not only succeed in his mission, but might also change the way the galaxy saw his entire species. Ethan stood outside the council chambers, letting the soft hum of the station wash over him. The corridors stretched ahead, polished and alive with subtle energy, but he did not rush. He had been observed, tested, and assessed, yet he felt no arrogance or pride. Instead, he felt a quiet focus, a sense of responsibility for the mission that had brought him here. The research data he carried was important, but even more important was the way he interacted, the way he observed, and the way he learned. Each step he took carried thought, not impulse. Talira followed silently, maintaining her distance yet tracking every movement, every glance, and every subtle reaction. She had spent weeks observing Ethan before his arrival, noting his habits, his responses under pressure, and his interactions with both humans and aliens. She had seen him act with patience, empathy, and intelligence, qualities rare among humans traveling the stars. Now, she was watching how he handled scrutiny, not just in simulations but in the subtle social dance of the council and its many representatives. Inside the chamber, delegates from dozens of worlds waited. Platforms hovered at different heights, some rotating slowly, others stationary, yet all seemed to be watching, analyzing, and ready to respond. As Ethan entered, a hush fell over the room. Some delegates whispered among themselves, curious about the human who had passed the simulations so calmly and effectively. Others maintained their silence, their attention focused on the potential implications of his presence. A holographic display projected Ethan's credentials in vivid detail. His name, origin, and mission were outlined clearly, highlighting both the importance of his research data and the urgency of its delivery. Ethan did not focus on the display. He let it exist in the periphery, his attention on the delegates, their body language, and the flow of conversation around him. This quiet awareness allowed him to anticipate questions, understand potential misunderstandings, and prepare responses without needing to pause or ask for clarification. Talira noted the subtle confidence in his posture. It was not arrogance. It was calm, deliberate, and controlled. Many candidates, human or alien, allowed themselves to be intimidated by the sheer presence of the council or the weight of expectation. Ethan did not. He acknowledged the room, observed its dynamics, and positioned himself mentally for the interactions that were about to unfold. The first council member to speak was a tall, multi-limbed being from the Zyran system. Its voice was smooth, measured, and authoritative. "Ethan Cole of Earth," it began, "your presence here is noted. We have reviewed your preliminary actions and your results are intriguing. However, we require understanding not just of your ability, but of your reasoning, your empathy, and your potential to interact constructively in situations of complexity. Are you prepared to demonstrate these qualities?" Ethan nodded. "I am," he replied calmly. He did not attempt to impress, nor did he speak cautiously out of fear. His words were simple, honest, and deliberate. That honesty alone drew attention. In a galaxy often dominated by strategic exaggeration, posturing, and hidden agendas, a human who spoke plainly and directly stood out. The council then introduced a live scenario. A holographic projection filled the chamber, depicting a complex network of colonies facing simultaneous technical and social challenges. Power disruptions, resource shortages, and communication breakdowns created cascading effects. Delegates observed how participants approached the scenario, noting leadership, problem-solving, and ethical decision-making. Ethan did not hesitate. He moved first to assess the most immediate threats, identifying areas where intervention could prevent the most disruption. He coordinated virtual teams of delegates, offering clear instructions while listening carefully to their feedback. He did not demand obedience. He offered guidance and suggested solutions, allowing others to contribute and take ownership. The result was a natural flow of collaboration, with multiple species working together efficiently under his quiet direction. Talira's eyes followed every movement. Humans often struggled with multi-species coordination, misinterpreting signals or focusing too narrowly on their own goals. Ethan's awareness, patience, and ability to integrate diverse perspectives into a cohesive plan were exceptional. She noted the subtle ways he built trust, encouraged participation, and maintained calm even when unexpected variables appeared in the simulation. Each action reinforced the potential she had sensed weeks earlier. The next phase of the challenge involved ethical decision-making. Holographic projections depicted difficult scenarios where resources were limited, and choices would inevitably favor some parties over others. Ethan paused, considering both immediate needs and long-term consequences. He made decisions carefully, explaining his reasoning to the delegates and inviting input from others affected by his choices. He balanced fairness with practicality, ensuring that solutions were sustainable and equitable rather than expedient or biased. By the time the simulation ended, murmurs filled the chamber. Delegates exchanged glances, some nodding in quiet approval. Ethan had not only demonstrated skill and intelligence, but had shown qualities that transcended technical competence. He had displayed empathy, moral reasoning, and an ability to inspire collaboration without coercion, qualities that the council valued, even if they were rare in candidates from any species. After the session, the council allowed a short pause for reflection. Ethan remained calm, observing how different delegates processed the experience. Some debated quietly, others analyzed data, and a few approached each other for discussion. He noted patterns: who reacted impulsively, who acted strategically, and who sought to understand before judging. This attention to detail was instinctive. He was learning as much from the delegates as he was demonstrating his abilities to them. Talira adjusted her stance, considering how best to proceed. Observation alone was insufficient. Intervention was sometimes necessary to ensure that talent like Ethan's was recognized. She made a small note in her records and prepared to provide her assessment at the appropriate moment. She had watched him for weeks, and now she needed to ensure that his potential was not overlooked due to prejudice or preconceptions about humans. The final challenge was both social and cognitive. Delegates were asked to propose solutions for a multi-system problem involving environmental restoration, resource management, and cultural reconciliation. Candidates were expected to negotiate, propose plans, and coordinate input from diverse species. Ethan approached this challenge thoughtfully, analyzing each proposal and considering the motivations behind them. He communicated clearly, acknowledged the strengths of others' ideas, and integrated them into a cohesive plan that addressed the multiple needs of the systems involved. Talira watched as Ethan navigated complex social interactions with ease. He did not dominate the conversation, nor did he withdraw. He facilitated understanding, helped resolve minor conflicts, and ensured that all voices were heard. His approach emphasized collaboration over authority, intelligence over impulse, and empathy over ego. These were qualities that could influence entire sectors of the galaxy if given the proper support and recognition. When the session concluded, the Council convened briefly to discuss their observations. Delegates debated, some expressing astonishment at the humans' abilities, others remaining skeptical but intrigued. Talira stepped forward, her voice measured but firm. "Council members, I have observed this candidate not only during these simulations but prior to his arrival. His behavior, approach, and decisions demonstrate qualities that are rare and valuable: insight, patience, empathy, and adaptability. He possesses the ability to work across species boundaries, inspire cooperation, and navigate complex challenges with integrity. I recommend his consideration for roles beyond his immediate task, where such qualities are essential." The chamber responded with quiet murmurs. Many delegates reconsidered previous assumptions about humans. Skepticism remained in some quarters, but curiosity and respect had grown. Ethan had not only met the Council's expectations, he had exceeded them, demonstrating that humanity, when observed and understood, could contribute meaningfully to the interstellar community in ways that were subtle, effective, and transformative. Ethan listened to Talira's assessment, absorbing the meaning without pride or ego. He had never sought recognition. His focus had always been on understanding, acting thoughtfully, and completing his mission effectively. Yet the acknowledgement of his qualities, especially by a respected officer like Talira, reinforced his sense of purpose. He realized that the galaxy was complex, and success required more than knowledge. It required understanding, patience, and the ability to navigate both technical and social systems with care. After the formal session, Ethan was escorted to a quieter area for debriefing. The aide explained the next steps in his mission, including interactions with specific council committees and potential integration into collaborative projects. Ethan listened, taking notes and asking clarifying questions, but he also continued to observe. Even in moments of instruction, he noticed subtle behaviors, unspoken patterns, and minor interactions that might influence outcomes later. Talira, observing from her position nearby, allowed herself a small, approving smile. Her initial interest had been professional. She had been assigned to monitor the human for competency. Yet, over time, she had come to recognize the unique qualities he displayed: consistent judgment, calm observation, empathy, and a quiet capacity to influence others positively. These qualities were not always visible at first glance, but she had seen them emerge naturally, and now the council had seen them too. Ethan paused outside the debriefing area, looking out over the atrium. Ships came and went, delegates moved with purpose, and the station continued its endless rhythm. He felt a quiet confidence growing within him, not from accolades or recognition, but from the knowledge that careful observation, thoughtful action, and empathy could achieve results beyond force or intimidation. This realization reinforced his sense of responsibility and purpose. Talira approached him finally, stepping from the shadows where she had remained unnoticed. "Ethan Cole," she said gently, her voice carrying authority without pressure, "you have done well. You have shown qualities that are rare in your species and remarkable in any being. I have been watching you long before your name was called, and I can say with certainty that your approach, your patience, and your empathy will serve not only your mission, but the galaxy in ways few can imagine." Ethan looked at her, surprised by her frank acknowledgement. "Thank you," he said simply. I didn't realize someone had been observing me that closely." Talira's crystalline skin shimmered slightly in the ambient light. Observation is not always about scrutiny. Sometimes it is about understanding potential, recognizing ability, and guiding where appropriate. You have shown that even a human, when acting with thought, patience, and care, can achieve what others might think impossible. Ethan nodded, processing her words. He realized that the galaxy had underestimated humans, that assumptions had been made, and yet here he was, demonstrating quietly but effectively that intelligence, empathy, and moral judgment could make a significant difference. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a desire to continue learning, adapting, and contributing. Talira gave a slight nod and stepped back, blending once again with the observers. She knew that the human's journey was only beginning. More challenges, decisions, and opportunities would arise, and his true potential would continue to unfold. But she was confident. She had seen it from the start, long before his name was called, and she knew that Ethan Cole was not just another visitor to the council. He was a human whose actions could shape understanding, foster collaboration, and quietly influence the galaxy in ways that power and aggression never could. Ethan walked toward the exit of the chamber, his mind already thinking ahead. He had learned much in these hours, not just about the council, the simulations, or interstellar procedures, but about himself, his approach, and the quiet power of patience, observation, and empathy. The galaxy was vast and complex, but he felt ready to face it, guided by his own judgment and the knowledge that careful action could have profound consequences. Talira, observing silently from a distance, allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had been right. This human was exceptional, not because of strength, speed, or aggression, but because of intelligence, integrity, and the ability to see the bigger picture. Long before his name was called, she had recognized it. Now, others were beginning to see it too, and the ripple effects would extend far beyond this station, far beyond this council, into a galaxy that had yet to fully understand the quiet power of humanity. Ethan exited the council chamber and stepped into a quieter section of the station, away from the bustling crowd. The lights here were softer, and the hum of engines faded into a gentle background pulse. He felt a subtle sense of relief, though the calm did not make him careless. Every step he took was still deliberate, every glance purposeful. He carried not only important research data, but also the awareness that his actions, small or large, were being observed, tested, and recorded. Talira watched from above, her presence still hidden. She had followed him through every corridor, every interaction, and every pause. She noted how he adjusted his pace to avoid collisions, how he helped others without expectation of reward, and how he quietly absorbed information, analyzing it for patterns and implications. In many ways, she realized, Ethan's observation skills were as sharp as her own. He saw details that others overlooked, understood subtle relationships between people and technology, and acted with care even in seemingly trivial situations. Ethan paused at a junction, noticing a group of young aliens struggling to coordinate a delivery robot. The robot emitted warning signals, its movements erratic, and the children looked anxious. Most adults nearby were too busy to intervene or dismiss the problem as minor. Ethan knelt beside the group and offered calm guidance. Using simple gestures and a few words in galactic common, he showed them how to reset the robot and redirect its path safely. The children's eyes lit up with understanding and gratitude. Talira made a mental note. Leadership often revealed itself not through command or authority, but through quiet intervention and problem-solving. Ethan was already demonstrating this naturally, without the expectation of recognition. He inspired cooperation through calmness, clarity, and thoughtfulness, a combination that was rare, even among experienced officers of the council. As he continued, Ethan entered a hall filled with floating platforms and holographic displays. Delegates from various species were scattered throughout, discussing projects, analyzing data, or simply observing the flow of visitors. Ethan's attention was drawn to a holographic map showing the distribution of resources across multiple systems. He paused to study it, noticing patterns in supply and demand, areas of potential conflict, and opportunities for collaboration. Even this brief observation allowed him to see challenges before they became problems, a skill Talira had recognized long ago. A sudden alert flashed on one of the displays. A cargo shuttle in a nearby docking bay had experienced a minor malfunction, causing a temporary disruption in loading schedules. While most delegates barely noticed, Ethan instinctively assessed the situation. He approached the docking bay, observing the technicians struggling with the automated systems. Without hesitation, he offered guidance. Using his understanding of patterns, timing, and logical troubleshooting, he suggested adjustments to the workflow that improved efficiency and reduced stress on the staff. The technicians followed his suggestions, and the delay was corrected smoothly. Though he received no formal acknowledgement, the subtle nods and relieved expressions of the staff were enough. Ethan did not seek praise. His satisfaction came from seeing the problem solved, and the people around him helped. Talira's interest deepened further. Humans often relied on ego, force, or persistence, yet here was one who achieved results through observation, reasoning, and empathy. This approach, she realized, could have long-term impact if applied consistently on a larger scale. Ethan moved on, entering a corridor leading to the council's archives. The archives were a vast repository of knowledge from countless civilizations, containing data on science, history, culture, and diplomacy. Most visitors overwhelmed by the scale would either rush through or ignore the details. Ethan, however, moved methodically, reading titles, noting cross-references, and absorbing information that might be relevant to his mission. He recognized patterns in resource allocation, environmental management, and interstellar communication protocols. Each observation strengthened his understanding, not just of the tasks at hand, but of the larger galaxy. Talira observed his focus, noting the subtle ways he processed complex information. He was not simply reading, he was integrating, predicting, and applying knowledge. This ability to synthesize information from diverse sources was rare, even among trained officers of the Council. It was a skill that could bridge gaps between species, resolve misunderstandings, and foster cooperation in situations where assumptions and biases often led to conflict. After the archives, Ethan was directed to a collaborative space where delegates from different systems were brainstorming solutions for environmental restoration projects. Multiple species contributed ideas, often speaking over one another or struggling to translate concepts across languages and cultural frameworks. Ethan stepped in quietly, observing the flow of conversation. He did not dominate the discussion. Instead, he asked clarifying questions, rephrased points for better understanding, and suggested ways to integrate multiple perspectives into a coherent plan. The delegates responded positively, and the group's collaboration improved immediately. Ethan facilitated without seeking credit, showing patience and respect for all participants. Talara noted the reactions of the delegates. Even experienced officers and diplomats were impressed by his approach. He demonstrated that effective leadership did not require authority or force. It required listening, understanding, and guiding others toward common goals. A few hours later, a meeting was scheduled with a small group of council members to review the humans' observations and contributions. As Ethan entered the chamber, he felt no intimidation. Instead, he felt prepared. He had been observing and learning all day, absorbing patterns, understanding behaviors, and applying logic. His approach was calm and deliberate, demonstrating maturity beyond his years and experience. Talara was present in the chamber, though she remained in the background. She had prepared a report summarizing his activities, highlighting not just his technical skills, but also his interpersonal abilities, ethical reasoning, and capacity for observation. Her intention was clear: ensure that the council recognized the full extent of his potential, beyond the superficial evaluations often applied to humans. The meeting began with a review of the day's observations. Council members asked questions about resource allocation, problem-solving approaches, and interspecies communication. Ethan responded with clarity, explaining his reasoning, noting patterns, and suggesting practical, fair solutions. He did not rely on authority. He relied on logic, empathy, and careful observation. Each answer demonstrated not only competence but a broader understanding of the dynamics that governed interstellar cooperation. One delegate, representing a species known for rapid decision-making and impatience with deliberation, challenged his suggestions. "Your approach is slow," it said, "and humans are known for error. How can we trust that these plans will succeed?" Ethan smiled slightly, calm but firm. "Speed alone does not guarantee success," he replied. "Understanding, careful assessment, and collaboration can prevent mistakes that rushing might cause. The galaxy is complex. Solutions that consider multiple perspectives are more sustainable and less likely to fail." Talara noted the reactions in the chamber. Some delegates appeared skeptical but intrigued. Others began nodding subtly, recognizing the logic and wisdom in his words. Ethan had not argued, nor had he imposed his ideas. He had simply presented reasoning grounded in observation, analysis, and empathy. The effect was profound. Doubt transformed into cautious respect. After several hours of discussion, the council concluded the meeting. Delegates expressed appreciation for Ethan's insights and noted that his approach challenged assumptions about humans, demonstrating that intelligence and judgment could manifest in ways beyond brute force, speed, or technical skill. Talara made her final notes, confident that the human's abilities had been recognized and that his potential would be acknowledged in future projects. Ethan left the chamber feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. He did not seek praise, yet he understood that his approach, thoughtful, patient, and empathetic, had made an impact. Even small actions, when applied consistently and with care, could influence perceptions, foster cooperation, and create opportunities for positive change. As he walked through the station toward the exit, he noticed minor challenges along the way. A small alien child was frightened by a cleaning drone, and Ethan knelt, speaking gently and showing the child that the device was harmless. A group of delegates struggled with a transport protocol, and he paused to explain it clearly and calmly. These actions were simple, yet their cumulative effect was significant. They demonstrated that leadership and influence were not always visible in grand gestures. Often, they emerged in quiet, consistent, and thoughtful interactions. Talira observed silently from a distance. She had seen humans make mistakes, act impulsively, or fail under pressure. Ethan, however, moved with balance, focus, and insight. She recognized that his success was not limited to a single mission, simulation, or interaction. His qualities, empathy, observation, patience, and ethical reasoning, were transferable, allowing him to navigate situations that others would struggle with. She understood that this human had the potential to shape not just immediate outcomes, but the broader perception of humanity across the galaxy. By the time Ethan reached his temporary quarters, the station had grown quieter, lights dimming as shifts changed and activity slowed. He took a moment to reflect on the day. He had faced observation, simulations, and council interactions, yet he had remained composed. Each decision he made had been deliberate, each interaction meaningful, and each observation applied with care. He realized that success in this environment required more than skill. It required character, understanding, and the ability to act thoughtfully in complex situations. Talira made her final assessment for the day. She had been watching him long before his name was called, and she now documented not only his actions but the qualities that made them remarkable. The combination of patience and intelligence, the balance of empathy and logic, and the natural ability to inspire cooperation and trust. Ethan had demonstrated what many doubted humans could achieve, proving that careful observation, deliberate action, and ethical reasoning could influence others far beyond expectations. Ethan settled into his quarters, reviewing notes, cross-referencing data, and preparing for the next phase of his mission. He understood that challenges would continue, and that his role required ongoing attention, reflection, and application of the principles he had demonstrated. Yet he felt confident, not from ego or pride, but from the knowledge that thoughtful, deliberate action could create meaningful impact, even in a galaxy filled with complexity and diversity. As night fell over the station, Ethan paused at a window overlooking the docking bays. Ships glimmered under artificial lights, while distant stars twinkled beyond. He reflected on the lessons of the day. Observation mattered, understanding mattered, and small actions could ripple outward in ways that changed outcomes, perceptions, and relationships. Talira, observing quietly from her post, allowed herself a faint smile. She had been right all along. This human, quiet, patient, and observant, was not just a visitor to the council. He was a force for understanding, cooperation, and the subtle yet profound influence that humanity could bring to the galaxy. The next morning, Ethan awoke early, feeling the quiet hum of the station. Through the floor beneath him, he stretched, noticing the subtle vibrations that marked the rhythm of the vast structure. Each vibration, each hum, was part of the station's life, a constant reminder of the complexity surrounding him. He prepared himself mentally for the day ahead. This phase of his mission would not involve simulations or guided tour. It would involve direct interaction, decision-making, and observation in real time, with consequences that could ripple across systems. Talira observed from her vantage point high above the corridors. She had been watching him for days, yet her interest never waned. She knew this human was not ordinary. Others might underestimate humans, assuming impulsiveness, stubbornness, or short attention spans. Ethan, however, had already demonstrated patience, empathy, and careful observation, qualities that allowed him to navigate challenges most species would struggle with. Today would reveal not just his competence, but his potential to influence outcomes on a broader scale. Ethan's first assignment of the day involved a meeting with representatives of a planetary system experiencing supply chain disruptions. The council had tasked him with analyzing the problem, and proposing practical solutions. When he arrived, he was greeted by delegates who seemed nervous, uncertain, and slightly skeptical of his abilities. He noticed immediately the tension in the room and the subtle power dynamics at play. Instead of asserting authority, Ethan began by listening. He asked questions calmly, observed reactions carefully, and allowed each delegate to explain the issues from their perspective. Some emphasized resource shortages, others focused on technological limitations, and a few highlighted social or cultural concerns. Ethan absorbed every detail, noting connections and discrepancies that might otherwise be overlooked. Talira observed his method, impressed by the ease with which he identified priorities and synthesized information. Many humans she had seen jumped to conclusions or focused on one perspective. Ethan, however, maintained balance. He considered each viewpoint, evaluated potential consequences, and prepared solutions that were both practical and equitable. His approach built trust subtly. Delegates who had initially doubted him began to relax, speaking more openly and collaborating naturally. After careful assessment, Ethan proposed a series of incremental adjustments. He suggested reallocating resources to critical areas first, introducing temporary shared protocols for equipment usage, and initiating a small team to oversee coordination and communication. He emphasized transparency and fairness, explaining each recommendation with clear reasoning. The delegates nodded slowly, clearly appreciating the thoughtfulness of his plan. Talira made mental notes. Ethan's strength lay not in dominance or command, but in observation, reasoning, and the quiet ability to inspire cooperation. His methods were subtle, yet highly effective, and could influence not just outcomes in a single system, but perceptions of humanity across multiple regions. Following the meeting, Ethan moved to a research hub where scientists from various species were working on environmental restoration projects. These projects were complex, combining biology, engineering, and cultural considerations. Many researchers became frustrated with disagreements and communication barriers. Ethan observed carefully, noticing not just technical challenges but the interpersonal dynamics at play. He approached one group where tension was highest. Two researchers were debating a methodology, neither willing to yield or listen. Ethan stepped in gently, rephrasing each argument in a neutral manner, highlighting the strengths of both approaches and proposing a combined solution. The researchers paused, considering his words, then slowly agreed to test the integrated method. Progress resumed, and frustration turned to collaboration. Talira allowed herself a quiet smile. Leadership often revealed itself not in authority or power, but in the ability to guide, integrate, and resolve conflicts. Ethan's skill in doing so was natural and consistent. She knew that his approach could transform not only individual projects but the relationships between species, fostering understanding, cooperation, and long-term success. Later, Ethan participated in a council session focusing on interstellar communication protocols. Delegates from multiple worlds presented ideas, many of which were incompatible or inefficient. Ethan listened carefully, noting patterns and commonalities. He asked questions politely, highlighted potential conflicts, and suggested streamlined methods that respected the unique needs of each species. The council members were impressed by his clarity and diplomacy. Even delegates who were skeptical at first began to recognize the value of his approach. By remaining calm, respectful, and attentive, Ethan bridged gaps that others had struggled to navigate for years. Talira's assessment confirmed what she had already known. His combination of observation, empathy, and logic allowed him to succeed where others might fail. In the afternoon, a small incident tested his adaptability. A minor technical failure disrupted communications in part of the station. Most candidates would have panicked, issued commands, or deferred responsibility. Ethan, however, paused to assess the situation. He identified the root cause, coordinated with available staff, and proposed a temporary solution that allowed operations to continue while permanent repairs were arranged. The disruption ended with minimal impact, and staff expressed quiet appreciation for his clear thinking. Talira noted the reactions of those around him. Trust and respect were growing, not through force or dominance, but through consistent, thoughtful action. This human's influence was subtle yet profound, and she recognized that it could have a lasting effect on how humans were perceived across multiple systems. As the day drew to a close, Ethan was invited to a private debrief with the senior council members. They asked him to reflect on his experiences, the challenges he had faced, and the approaches he had taken. He spoke candidly, explaining how observation, patience, and empathy had guided his decisions. He emphasized the importance of understanding the needs of others, integrating multiple perspectives, and considering long-term consequences rather than seeking immediate recognition or reward. The council members listened carefully, impressed by the depth of his reflection. Some nodded slowly, others exchanged quiet comments, and a few made notes for further consideration. Ethan's approach challenged assumptions about humans, demonstrating that intelligence and moral reasoning could manifest in ways that were subtle, deliberate, and profoundly effective. Talira spoke at the end of the session, summarizing her observations. "Council members," she said, her voice calm yet authoritative, "Ethan Cole has demonstrated qualities that are rare and valuable: careful observation, patience, empathy, and the ability to integrate diverse perspectives into practical solutions. His approach is not forceful or impulsive, yet it achieves results that inspire trust, cooperation, and progress. I recommend that his contributions be recognized, and that he be considered for ongoing collaborative projects where these qualities are essential." The chamber responded with quiet acknowledgement. Delegates who had been skeptical reconsidered their assumptions. Respect and curiosity replaced doubt. Ethan had not only fulfilled his mission, but had also demonstrated the potential of humanity in ways that challenged preconceived notions and inspired new thinking. As he left the chamber, Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction. Recognition was not his goal, understanding and positive impact were. Yet he understood that his actions had influenced perceptions, created opportunities for collaboration, and demonstrated that thoughtful, ethical reasoning could succeed even in the most complex and diverse environments. Talira observed him from a distance, satisfied that her assessment had been received and valued. She had been watching him long before his name was called, and she had recognized qualities that many others might have overlooked. Now the council had seen what she had seen: a human capable of bridging differences, fostering cooperation, and influencing outcomes through observation, reasoning, and empathy rather than force. Ethan returned to his quarters, reflecting on the day's events. He considered the lessons he had learned, the relationships he had fostered, and the patterns he had observed. He realized that success in the galaxy required more than technical skill or intelligence. It required character, integrity, and the ability to act thoughtfully in situations of complexity. Small actions, when guided by understanding and empathy, could ripple outward and create significant change. In the quiet of his quarters, he reviewed his notes, organized his observations, and considered next steps for the mission. Each decision, each interaction, and each insight had been a test of his judgment, patience, and ethical reasoning. He recognized that his approach, thoughtful, deliberate, and respectful, had earned trust and influence far beyond what he had initially imagined. Talira made a final observation for the day. She had seen many humans, but Ethan was exceptional. His success was not a matter of speed, strength, or force. It was a matter of intelligence, observation, empathy, and moral reasoning. These qualities were rare, and when applied consistently, they had the power to influence outcomes, perceptions, and relationships on a scale that few species could match. She documented her report, confident that his potential would continue to unfold, and that humanity's place in the galaxy might be redefined through individuals like him. As the artificial night descended over the station, Ethan gazed out at the stars, reflecting on the interconnectedness of the galaxy. Systems were linked by technology, trade, and communication, but also by trust, cooperation, and understanding. He realized that his actions, guided by careful observation and empathy, had contributed not only to his mission, but to the broader goal of fostering collaboration and understanding across diverse civilizations. Talira, observing silently, allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had been right all along. The human she had watched, long before his name was called, was not only capable but extraordinary. Through calm reasoning, empathy, and careful observation, he had demonstrated that humanity could influence the galaxy in subtle yet profound ways. His presence, his choices, and his approach had already begun to shift perceptions, building trust, inspiring cooperation, and proving that humans, often underestimated, could make a meaningful difference. Ethan felt a quiet sense of purpose as he prepared for the next stage of his journey. He understood that challenges would continue, that decisions would become more complex, and that his actions would ripple outward in ways he might not always see. Yet he was confident in his approach. Observation, patience, empathy, and thoughtful action were not just tools. They were principles that could guide him through any challenge, foster trust, and create meaningful impact. As he drifted into sleep, the station hummed softly beneath him. The galaxy beyond was vast and unpredictable, filled with complexity, diversity, and challenges. Yet Ethan Cole, observed long before his name was called, had shown that humanity could rise to meet these challenges, not through force, speed, or domination, but through intelligence, empathy, and the quiet power of careful observation. The galaxy had begun to notice, and the potential of humanity had never been clearer.